official. Well, it's the only. So it's the unofficial, but it's also the only. So it puts us in a weird place as far as what the relationship is with the conference. But we're at Datapalooza. We're streaming Datapalooza. Devin is, of course, a Datapalooza. How many times have you been to Datapalooza?
Oh God, I think every year since its inception.
Really?
Yeah.
Even the first one?
Well, yeah.
Most people missed the first one.
I think I was at the first one. I'm pretty sure I was at the first one because I was living here. So.
Anyways, I just gave a compliment to Devin that she was a formerly good bureaucrat. I really think that. I hope that sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I think there are bureaucrats who are frustrated with their lives and they get bitter, and you were never that way.
Yeah, maybe I
really appreciate it. Well, I think there is an arc. I see federal employees go through this arc where they right about the same time they get really good at their jobs.
Yeah.
They start to get a little burned out.
Yeah.
And which is a shame, because I'm always advocating for federal employees just stay 6 more months, because the 6 more months at the end, when you know all the stuff, you're really effective.
You're much more effective.
You're really effective.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're at Datapalooza. We're streaming. I'm actually going to ask Devin to introduce herself so that, because I make the mistake of not introducing the people that I know and like the best well enough.
Oh, okay.
So please, what do you do now? What did you do before?
Sure. I'm Devin McGraw. I am the lead for data stewardship and data sharing at Invitae, which is a clinical genetic testing company. Been there for about 1.5 years because they purchased a company that I helped co-found called Citizen, which helps patients gather all their health information from all the places they've been seen so that they can then, they're empowered to seek second, third, fourth opinions, seek other care options, share data with a caregiver, contribute data to research, all of those things. But because the data is organized and under their control. And I had previously been in federal service. I was at HHS at the Office for Civil Rights, running the HIPAA division as a career federal employee, not a political appointee. And then also the acting chief privacy officer at ONC. And before that, I was at CDT as the director of the Health Privacy Project, and I've done stints in law firms before.
And you are a lawyer.
And I am a lawyer.
That is how you came to be in this career.
Yeah. Yes, I'm a lawyer, and I have a public health master's too.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I ask people to introduce themselves.
Yeah.
Because I learned things.
Yes.
So at Citizen, you do some amazing work in transparency of HIPAA records and things like this. Is that still happening? Is that still?
We still have a scorecard.
There? Okay.
We call it the HIPAA patient record scorecard. And it is a live populating website that is based on our experience with the Citizen platform, which is now owned by Invitae, of seeking data on behalf of our users who come to us and say, I want to get my health data and I want to store it in a Citizen account for my use. And we created a scorecard that rates how well they do in accordance with HIPAA. We have not updated it to reflect the information blocking rules because I'm still trying to think about how to do that. But it does have a rating between 1 and 5 stars. How well are you doing? If you're getting 1 star, you're not in compliance with HIPAA. If you're getting 2 stars, you're in compliance, but it's because we had to get you there through a lot of work. So it's still live. The one thing that we haven't done in a while is to do kind of a summary report in terms of what percentage of the providers are 1s or 2s or 3s or 4s, and how does that compare with when we first started the scorecard? So, because we were seeing market improvement as we were analyzing that data, but that
makes me so happy.
Yeah,
to hear that.
Yeah, we were seeing market improvement.
So one of the things that I think I'm going to try to do, and let me see if I can pull up our currently running session. I think I need to refresh this, and does say we're live, doesn't it? I think I may be calling you Mark Scrimshire. I apologize for that. Mark might be the label of all of my shows.
Oh, that's okay. I like Mark.
I need to remember to. And it's Mark.
Isn't that his coat?
No, these are mine.
These are both yours.
This one was the one. This is a Regina Holiday.
Yeah.
Which it's funny because it's got. You can see this one is reflected here. Anyways, I wanted to scroll down here and at least be able to see if there's somebody commenting, because the premise of this,
Ah.
which I was just briefly explaining on camera, is that there's a pandemic going on, recession going on.
Yes.
Datapalooza historically has been extraordinarily patient-centric and has gone above and beyond. I think there's a couple of things that you're supposed to do for a conference to comply with various. Datapalooza has always done those things and gone beyond.
Yeah.
Right. They've done a brilliant job of making sure that patients are in the room. But we recognize that because of the pandemic and because of the recession, it's hard for patients to get here. So the whole point of this is to provide free content with some of the speakers.
Oh, great.
To talk about things that are talked about on the main stage.
Yeah.
And also to have some resources, because I realize when I get into a conversation with you, I mean, I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
I really like you. I love talking about private stuff.
Like
You are the
too,
person.
Fred.
Oh, thank you so much. You are the person that I go to ask some of my hardest questions about things too. And so we immediately get into this kind of language. So let me just kind of preface.
Okay.
First, HHS OCR is responsible for enforcing the portions of HIPAA that give rights to patients to get access to their medical records.
Mm-hmm.
So Devin was, enforcing that at one time, but then when she left, she created a scorecard about how much healthcare organizations that have patient records and are obligated under HIPAA to make requests for them, are whether or not they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And that scorecard, from my perspective, has done as much, and I don't know this, I think this is a compliment, has probably done as much as your enforcement work, in the sense that it's created a public shaming effect that has caused people to start paying attention to their obligations under HIPAA. And in general, the notion that data is accessible to patients under the law is a big part of the premise for getting data. And so this issue seems like it's a side issue, but it's really at the very spine of Datapalooza and the idea of healthcare data being used for patients, being used by patients, having a benefit. We talk about the privacy risks all the time, and I think actually, were you in charge of HIPAA violations as well? Or was it
policy and enforcement. Yeah.
So indeed, both sides of the coin, exercising data for good and protecting data from bad use. Devin has some of the most relevant experience there is. And I will try to pause and go back and fill in our acronyms and everything else and do that, because we naturally slip into a language. It was really bad with me and Mark, because we were like, fire this and OAuth, and it's just terrible. So, but your talk from the stage today, your panel was on DOBS.
Yes.
So if you don't mind me switching quickly to that as a topic. Well, first of all, tell me as though I did not know, because probably I don't actually know the right answer.
Okay.
What is DOBS and what are the implications of DOBS?
Okay. So DOBS was a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court that basically said that Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided, and there is no constitutional right to abortion care, which means states have the freedom to restrict it, open it, do whatever they want to do without sort of paying attention to Roe and many, many cases that came after it that sort of established a constitutional right, but with some ability for states to regulate. So, we saw a lot of laws around waiting periods, and you have to show a sonogram, and, different other ways that the anti-abortion proponents have tried to make abortion more difficult to get. At any rate, there was always this idea that if you passed a state law that restricted abortion in some way, that it might not be constitutional in light of Roe. And so ultimately what happened in DOBS is the Supreme Court said, there is no constitutional right. And so that opened up the ability for states to pass whatever laws they thought they wanted to from a policy standpoint. And so we're seeing a lot of laws, and some of them were trigger laws that didn't go into effect until Roe versus Wade was passed, and other laws are newer laws. But in essence, what they do is some of them create criminal and or civil or both penalties for either seeking pregnancy termination services, so for patients, or criminalize the kind of aiding and abetting or performance of an abortion service. You're seeing some crackdowns on the ability to get abortion care across state lines, to be able to procure a medication abortion by mail. lots of, even an attempted undermining of the FDA's decision of many years ago to approve the use of medication abortion, mifepristone, and also their adoption of Plan B over the counter. So just attack, and without the protection of the this idea that there's at least some constitutional right to some of this stuff, it all went away, and so the environment is increasingly hostile. And as we look to basically try to expand the amount of data sharing that occurs in this country so that state lines are no longer, the barrier, and address what are considerable maternal health disparities that in care that exist, and the fact that, among developed countries, we rank dead last in maternal health outcomes. Data helps us fix some of that kind of understand where some of that's going. But if now we have some reluctance to share that data, or even create that data in the first place, that it may be shared because of the more real possibility that that data could be weaponized against a person or their medical provider is essentially what the topic was about. And we also, not just we also talked on the panel, not just about healthcare system data, but just routine data around location and period tracking apps and search data, and the ways that data is collected and flows, and how that might end up being not just used against you in terms of, feeling like your privacy was invaded based on your search, but, some heightened consequences around criminal investigation, civil liability, et cetera.
So I was thinking about this, and I want to just kind of be totally honest with the stream. If you Google my last name, you will find my father, and my father wears a red hat, so to speak. Not only does he wear a red hat, he has been working for years against abortion rights. I don't agree with him on these topics. I should point out very clearly. He actually represented Norma McCorvey, who was Roe v. Wade, as she went back to try and overturn Roe v. Wade. And so I've had dinner with Norma McCorvey, many times. I knew her before she died. She recently died. She released a video about her going into the kind of religious right-wing community and kind of fooling them. It just came out after she died. And it's a fascinating thing. But I want, this is the internet, and you're going to figure it out sooner or later. So I just want to tell the stream that's what my father did. I don't agree with him, and
you're not an interloper.
I'm not like but I do have opinions about this. I've been talking about this for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And once you let go of the kind of religious aspects, I'm no longer religious. Then a lot of that just goes out the window with it. And I asked you kind of my framing question for you is top 3 ways practically that Dobbs is going to impact the care of women. Let's say maybe in a red state that hasn't necessarily passed penalizing laws yet, but is likely to. How does the world change?
Not very many of those. Most of them
have already done it.
Most of the states where there is considerable sway by the anti-abortion voters, they've already passed those laws. So
so maybe on average then.
Yeah. So I think the immediate impact is on access issues, right? That's what people think about first is, okay, how are we going to deliver the kind of comprehensive reproductive health care that people deserve to people who live in states that where there's a hostile climate, because there's a state law, or because there's there's a pending state law. At any rate, that's a big chunk of the country is, the people who live in those states face that kind of, can I travel? Do I have the funds to travel? If I travel and I go get this care in another state, can I still return home and not be prosecuted, or not have my medical provider prosecuted, or be discriminated against in terms of every other kind of healthcare that I get from this point forward? Those are big issues. And I think in the immediate impact of Dobbs there, that was the major focus and continues to be, and as it should. But we think about data, right? We're at Health Datapalooza, and so what we talked about today on our panel is sort of my second concern, which is how do we make sure that the data can't be weaponized against a person or their medical provider because they've sought a medical service, particularly if they've sought it in a lawful way, right? Seeking it in a place where it was delivered lawfully, even if that meant that they traveled for it, much less just seeking it, maybe, somewhat sub rosa in a hostile place. But I think it's more likely that the access is just not available in a lot of these states that have passed restrictive laws.
So let's be specific. Like, so I used to live in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
Woman lives in Houston, Texas. They're practically speaking, there's no more Planned Parenthood there. Going to get on a Southwest flight, maybe fly to DC or New York or California.
Or even New Mexico. They don't have to go quite so far.
Right?
Yeah.
It's probably closest. They get off the plane, they go see their provider. There's a medical record created.
Yeah.
Right. From there, what part of the potential story bothers you?
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is we have some uncertainty from a legal standpoint about the ability for a Texas authority to go into New Mexico and, through court order, demand records because this person broke the law. They sought a service that was unlawful, or they sought a service for which someone could. And
HIPAA
sue.
has carve-outs for lawful requests from law providers.
Yeah.
So theoretically, there's, let's say, Planned Parenthood in New Mexico gets a subpoena, maybe something like this. Hey, we want us to have access to your medical records for Jane, this Sally, in our example. And do they have to do? How would they respond? What do they respond? I think the answer is it's just going to be a mess. Is that right?
Well, so first off, from a HIPAA standpoint, there's nothing that Planned Parenthood can rely on HIPAA to say, no, HIPAA won't allow me to share that with you. Okay. Because HIPAA has these law enforcement exceptions. HIPAA is not the source of the requirement to disclose, but HIPAA says you can disclose. There's no power. There's no safety. Power. There's no defensive power.
Okay, that's interesting.
And so, then what a Planned Parenthood in New Mexico would then do would be to say, we can try to fight this. Okay. We can try to use the courts in our protected state, or maybe even federal court to try to fight this in some way, shape, or form. Because Planned Parenthood would do that. They would not, just roll over.
They wouldn't roll over.
But let's take another facility, Hospital of New Mexico, right?
University of
whatever. It's a just a place where someone got healthcare. They're faced with a subpoena from law enforcement. They either don't have the resources or don't have the energy to fight it, and they just comply with it.
So now it comes to, like, what is it like in our kind of shared area? I'm an interoperability specialist. I've been trying to contribute in my own meager ways to interoperability for years.
Yeah.
So let's imagine that Sally went to New Mexico because she had to get out of Texas to be able to have an abortion. She goes to Planned Parenthood, she has her abortion, and then she stays there for a year because she doesn't feel like it's safe to go back to Texas, and she just gets care at university. And so at the university, she requests the medical records digitally to transfer from Planned Parenthood to the University and then this happens. Well, now the record from Planned Parenthood is in the university system, and the fact that they're complying or willing to comply means that everything that Planned Parenthood would have protected is no longer protected.
Right.
Am I right in my framing of this scenario?
No, you are right. And here's another sort of twist on that scenario. Okay, so let's say she doesn't stay in New Mexico. She's got kids in Texas. She's got a family that she cares for. She can't really leave the state for longer than was necessary for her to get the procedure that she lawfully sought and was delivered to her. So she returns to Texas.
Right, okay.
A year goes by, maybe less than a year, and she has a medical complication.
Okay.
She goes into a hospital in Texas. That hospital is on the Epic system.
Right.
They type in care everywhere. Sally Jones. Let's see her background. Let's see her background. Well, University of New Mexico Hospital, we're making these things up, by the way, is also on Epic.
Well, we're making these things up, but they're extraordinarily plausible.
Yeah, they are absolutely plausible. I just don't want there to be a University of New Mexico
there is no
hospital.
We're not talking. We're not saying anything bad about University of New Mexico.
Yeah. Well,
they're great.
Yeah. I'm sure they're great. I hope they're great. But they transmit Sally's records to the hospital in Texas so that she can get the right health care.
Well,
through
and
care
of course,
everywhere.
the right care, healthcare. Now we're doing quoted fingers, right? Because
Yeah.
it could mean something very different. And maybe Planned
Comprehensive care
Parenthood
for
is
her.
smart enough not to be publishing their stuff on the Epic network.
Well, maybe not. But
maybe
again,
not. But
if
it doesn't matter if the data has already been transferred over to
if the data gets transferred in for a legitimate treatment episode,
Right.
and now it's in Texas.
Right.
So now all of the questions that we have from a legal perspective about could authorities cross state lines and hold people accountable for seeking a legal service in another state? There's definitely some constitutional issues potentially there that we will, I'm sure, see cases to get resolved on. But the bottom line is that our interoperability efforts are poking a gigantic hole in the idea that states can carve out safe zones, because we're going to start sending data, or we already are sending data all over the country for perfectly legitimate reasons, but sending it into places where it's no longer protected.
And one of the scenarios that I think we might have just briefly talked about on an escalator was it doesn't even necessarily have to mean that you have the procedure on the record. So both Planned Parenthood and the university could theoretically be very discreet and be doing the right things. But if either one of them just has the fact that Sally was pregnant and there is no child,
right, no record of a birth,
is enough for someone in Texas to go, oh, wait a minute, this is now a crime.
Right, I suspect a crime has been committed, or I suspect
or whatever
a civil
it is. Now we're
wrong.
gonna pull in the people who are gonna treat this person as a criminal.
Yeah, we're going to investigate what happened to Sally's pregnancy. We're going to try to figure it out.
Okay, well, so I think number one is just the problem. Number two is the wrench this problem throws into interoperability, because we have been making the presumption, broadly speaking, that anyone who needs access to a medical record is doing so from a place of essentially goodwill.
Yeah.
And now this issue is throwing a wrench into that. What would be number three? My guess would be something about the controversies about just doing things like menstruation tracking.
Yeah, I think the third set of issues are external to the healthcare system and the activities of people to seek care or just information that is intended to help guide their decision making, and yet you're creating this track record of things that they've looked at that could subject them to further legal scrutiny.